Okay. You are live.
Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting, September 4th. Welcome all. Bruce is, where is he on journey back?
Journey back home.
Journey back home. So today you have myself and Jeff Parkin. As a reminder to all in the audience, we stream this live. No worries. We stream this live, so it would be great if you could announce your name for those who can't see it on camera, or off camera, I should say. Hey, Lynn.
Hi.
All right, got the agenda here. Anyone have any extra agendas if anyone wishes to have them? Minutes, we have a whole bunch of minutes to approve. I don't know if you've read them all or recall them all. I surely do not. And my thought was to get these again and then table this and try to do these next month.
Okay.
That makes sense?
I'm agreeable to that.
Yeah. All those in favor, say aye. So item number 2 is tabled for next month. We'll move to oral communications from the public. Is there anyone here to speak or have a comment or concern? Yes, Matt Starr.
Matt Starr. I have a couple things I want to bring to the board. First is, I don't know if you saw the Spectrum this past week about the salt and well issues they've been having up there for years and years. Which my well as well has doubled in content since I bought the property and put a well in. And I've been sending letters to the Board of Selectmen, since 2010, 2014, with all sorts of documentation, requests for help, and I annually, Joyce can adhere to that I send regular emails for them to log in the Matt Starr file. I've sent to the Conservation Commission. I've sent copies of the federal recommendations for using roadway de-icing products. I've tallied up the amounts that have been used in the town of Kent by square mile. It's astronomical. And just this past year, they started a new process of using salt berms alongside the road, wherever there's like ice, putting like these berms of salt down along the edges of the road. Bruce is aware of this. I email him all the time about it, taking pictures, I've shared it, and really on deaf ears. I don't know why. Unfortunately, my property is one of the lowest in the subdivision of Good Hill Botsford Road. Along Botsford Road, over the years, they've continued to put little berms in front of all the driveways, which means all the water from the hill all the way down goes down right by Mona Weeks's, in that vicinity, and then exits off either side, and a lot of it ends up in my property. So I'm asking the board, I was hoping Bruce would be here because I know he's well aware of it, even though he hasn't done anything about it. They continue not, or someone's continuing not to monitor the use of salt on the roadways. There's blatant times where it's been 38 degrees and sunny out, and they've pre-treated our road first thing in the morning. Salting right before rainstorms, when the weather forecast is to exceed freezing temperatures, really above freezing temperatures. And the amount that's been used, and even Bruce came up and has verified, there was a couple times, and he said it was employee error once, mechanical error once, these huge piles of salt. And some of it treated with magnesium, sodium, calcium, whatever else. So I asked the board for help in this matter to address it with the first selectman, discuss it with the road foreman, and look at what's happening in other towns. It's not just Sherman, it's throughout the country. They're having this problem, and once it gets into wells, there's really nothing you can do about it. So that's issue number 1. The second thing I wanted to
say on that issue?
Sure.
Yeah. I myself noticed just now, living on Elizabeth Street, that it is heavily salted and oftentimes weather isn't really the weather that you think it's supposed to be for that kind of condition. I don't know who we'll have to ask as to what our protocol is for how much you put on, what are the standards, you know, what.
Numerous, almost annually, I send Bruce a copy of the federal standards, which have been updated annually.
Okay.
Showing what procedures are, what the best methods are to use.
So it's your contention, at least from your understanding, that those practices are not being put in place, or is it just that's?
Those practices have been far exceeded. I've witnessed myself, and this past year, the use of salt to make berms alongside the road.
Yeah.
You know, I go up and down Skiff Mountain Road 4 or 5 times a week, and there was one day there was no rain, there was nothing, but there was ice damming along the edge of the road, and they put berms 6 to 12 inches high of ice, of road salt, bermed up
To melt
it,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah.
and to prevent it from going further into the roadway. I get what they're trying to do, but the use of salt like that is not what it's intended for, and the detrimental effects long-term, you know? It may seem like a quick fix, but long-term, you gotta fix the problem, not throw chemicals at it. And the cost of salt for the town of Kent. I'm sure you guys are looking at that, it's huge.
Well, it's not anything we can take action on today with
No.
Bruce, but I think it would be appropriate to put it as an agenda item and have a meeting with Rick and see if there's a way to evaluate it. And the federal standards would seem to be a reasonable starting point.
Yeah.
There may be some flexibility in the standards that we'd have to adapt to, given whatever's unique to Kent. But, you know, at least to make sure we're addressing the standards.
Okay.
It may be no issue to me.
Yeah, if you need any information, I can provide it, but I have sent Bruce like the totals used per square mile, both liquids and salt, sand, so he has all that, he knows.
If you can just send it to me, then I can include it in the packet for the next month, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
The second issue I'd like to bring to your attention is the Connecticut Road project, which started well over a year ago. And last year, I notified Bruce that there had been siltation fence put up as per their permit to do the work up there through the Inland Wetlands Commission. But during the dumping of material, it had numerous boulders had toppled the fence. Sand had washed over the fence. And you know, I've done construction sites, I understand, you know, there's occasionally that happens and you have to just fix it or reinforce it with hay bales or something else. That has continued on for over a year. The Sunday before the project was to restart again, I went up and took pictures again to see, I was devastated to see how bad it has been. And, you know, you have that preserve up there with the beaver pond, and I sent the email out, I'm sure you guys got it. I haven't heard really any responses. You know, the siltation into that is 60, 70 feet, rock and sand. There's a vernal pool there, completely silted in. I don't know why, Bruce assured me somebody was monitoring it from Inland Wetlands to make sure that it was taken care of and monitored. I see a few days later they put up brand new silt fencing and mucked out some of the stuff that had gone over. So obviously I understand they got my email, and I did email back and forth with Donna, who was unsure whether there was actual violation of the permit. I'm a little shocked that the town disregards the regulations, but those same people disregarding the regulations are the ones dropping notes to Donna and letting Donna know when other people are violating taxpayers so she can go after them. It really doesn't make much sense. You know, what you have happening at the town garage with the siltation and the water flow into the brook that goes over behind Templeton's, yet the town can still somehow feel free to issue an NOV to someone that's violating the inland wetlands regulations. It just doesn't seem right. I know what I've had to go through every time I've done anything, putting up a silt fence, making sure it was secure, and it really seems like there's some blatant disregard, and I just don't understand it. I'm looking for a little clarification why that's being allowed for so long.
So the silt fence at Connecticut Road project has been restored?
There's been new silt fencing put in there. See, Rick just snuck in the back, so he can probably add when that was added, but there's new silt fencing there, but there is still a substantial amount of erosion that went into the Beaver Pond swamp area.
Who owns the land at the Beaver Pond? Is that the land trust?
I believe it's all land
Is
trust,
that
yeah.
the Kent Land Trust?
Yep.
Have they made any comments or questions or concerns? Have they been on the site, do we know?
I don't know.
Something we should,
Did the town notify them that they had
I don't know, have we?
Notified that they had a what?
that the town's project washed into their property, into a preserve?
Well, it doesn't sound like that, Matt. I think probably the route to take would, one, to find out, and we can find out what the land trust position is. Two, I think your concern is valid if indeed a town project is going on. There should be standards, at least, that they hold to, that they hold the rest of the town to, most definitely. Monitoring it, however, is certainly a challenge, I think, and voices like yours are important because that's when we find out there is a problem. I don't know what corrective measures, Donna, do you have any inland wetland corrective measures other than?
I was there.
Uh-huh.
And by the time I got there, all the silt fencing was all taken care of. Everything was corrected that needed to be corrected. And just as a note, from July 15th to August 14th, Warren received, which is right next to where the job is, almost 13 inches of rain. You're gonna get erosion. It's just gonna happen, you know?
But help me if I'm doing a development,
Mm-hmm.
Skiff Mountain, and that happens, and Skiff Mountain gets 13 inches of rain, and my silt fences blow out.
Right, it's your responsibility to put them back up again.
So following that, wouldn't it have been the town's responsibility to make sure that that was put up properly? Okay, and what is the mechanism that we use to do that?
The engineer's design, and then I go up and check it.
So is the catalyst 13 inches of rain or a certain amount of rain, or is it just checked weekly? I'm just trying to understand the
No, I mean, if it
job
has been
report.
rainy, I will go out and drive around and look at things.
Well, I'm sorry, but you don't do that if I were doing a Skip Mountain project. Somebody else would say, hey, look, your fences have blown down, or an engineer or a contractor would say it, and then we'd have to address it, I guess. I'm just trying to understand the process in which a project, whatever and whomever runs it, ends up addressing issues like this so that a neighbor doesn't have to, it's great we have neighbors watching things, but.
Right, I mean, they can contact me and then I would go out. You know, which
I mean, I say this on a personal level. I travel that road a lot, and I have noticed that there is erosion. It's pretty clear. It's also a very different project than most, where you're building up a road. How many feet?
13.
13 feet. I mean, that's pretty challenging, especially when that 13 feet, the gully widens pretty far.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll explain what we're doing. We replaced put new silt fence on the outside of where it washed through.
Yeah.
And as the areas come out from under the high water from all that rain, we're shoveling the stuff back out of what washed through. So,
And is that an anticipated part of the project like that? Or just
looked at the other day that the stuff's overflowing the silt fence and get it replaced at that time. It's not much else you can do besides shovel it back, so that's what we're working on.
I guess I'm just wondering, a project like that to me looks like it's going to do that again. And if that's the case, because it's the severe slope, is there?
It should, I think part of the cause of it was from the amount of material that got plowed up in the winter. The water wasn't going where it should have.
Okay.
We did have a rock swale down that one side where most of it washed, and that got blocked up, and the water went down past that and went over the fill instead.
guess I'm just not clear as to how a project like this is run. You're the foreman on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there a report that you report to the wetlands every month, or?
I spoke to Don about it before we started working again, so we're gonna replace any silt fence where it's been knocked down. And
Yeah, I don't mean just specifically in this project. I'm trying to understand, making up again, you do something on Skip Mountain Road and there's wetlands there. Is that a monthly, weekly, every 3 months that you check in and say, everything looks good? Is there a process in which we drive by and say, okay, it looks good?
I mean, if I'm out, I'm driving by, I go and I look to see.
But nothing on a routine basis? Okay.
No. I mean, you have to put a certain amount of trust in the people that are doing the job.
No, I don't think this.
And I think, you know, based on what the conditions are, yeah, I mean, if it's been a rainy time, then I will go out and drive around and look at that.
I don't think this is a question of trust as again, which I find a lot around here, is process. The process doesn't seem to be fluid enough, pardon the pun, but that one would say, yeah, we've checked it. Yeah, we're in a very sensitive area. Someone at the land trust should be checking it. I mean, it's their property. They should be, I would think, doing that. And that's all I'm asking about, and I think Matt's asking about that in the specific, but clearly with the road salt and all of that, who at this level is watching it?
Well, I don't watch the road salt, so.
No. Yeah.
Chris, as I said right in the beginning, you know, this has been going on for a year.
The project, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and some of that silt fence has been down since last year.
I would agree.
I know every project I've ever had to go through wetlands, which hasn't been a lot, but I do know there was requirements what I had to do. And in one case, it was I had to reinforce, even though there was barely any grade, I had to reinforce with hay bales spiked in case of substantial rainfall. I built a shed that is pretty much on flat ground, and I had to put silt fencing around it, even though there was no forecast for rain and I really wasn't disturbing much soil. I was pouring a pad on flat ground. So all I'm asking for is whatever the taxpayers are held to, I think the town itself has to abide by the inland wetlands regulations as well. And you're responsible for yourself to monitor your project. You can't just say, well, it's the end of the year, we're not gonna do any work till next year, let's just leave it. And we'll illegally go into the wetlands and muck it out in the spring, because really that's not allowed. You ask the Wetlands Commissions, they're gonna tell you, you can't just decide that you had number one, you've had an incident where your erosion controls did not work and they failed. It's documented, people have pictures of it, they can prove it, before the project, during the project, and now after. You have to go back to the Inland Wetlands Commission, let them know that you've had a failure, and is it okay for us to go in there and clean that out? And how do you want us to clean it out? Listen, you have people ratting out people, taxpayers all over town, anytime they do anything wrong. You better be doing it, you better be setting the example as the town of Kent. You better be setting the example if you're gonna bring taxpayers that pay the salaries up on NOVs every time they have one little malfunction. Whether they didn't know they needed a permit or they violated their permit. That's my point.
I think point well
I think you raise a fair point. I think this strikes me as a kind of a process question as to how would we get notified of this.
Well, to Don's point, I don't think we are supposed to.
Well, we,
possibly Bruce.
meaning the whole town. Bruce, I don't think it's Bruce's job to drive around either. I know Don occasionally inspects. Rick is most often involved with the particular sites. Do we need to consider establishing what a process is to monitor our own projects?
That may be. That may be.
I think Matt's identified some legitimate issues, but I'm not sure what the direction is.
Well, that is one thing I do believe that we should look at the process, or ask those who are in charge look at the process. I'm just a little perplexed if Matt's saying that it's a something that has been going on for a long time. And if that's the case, has Wetland A not known about it? I don't mean to put you in the spot, because I know you're not the commission.
Right.
And if they had known about it, what is the process that they would take to correct anybody, or specifically the town?
You wanna know what, you have to rephrase that, because you lost me halfway through.
Surely, sorry.
Mhm.
I guess I'm surprised if this is such an issue, and I have seen it personally. I've driven that road enough to know that those silt fences did not do their job. The question is, what is the mechanism that Wetlands uses in which to monitor those? And I know the answer was earlier, it's supposed to be self-imposed, but is it really, does that really happen? Is that an effective process?
For the most part, it's a very effective process.
Okay.
I mean, you know, Rick and I work really closely together, and contrary to what you seem to think, this is not a government cover-up, which was actually the last email that you sent on August 23rd. And I find that offensive.
Okay.
You know, I work the best that I can with the guys that come in and work with me. Rick did tell me that they had a failure. Rick told me that they were gonna fix it. There's no reason why he needed to come to the commission and tell the commission what we already knew. And we already knew that he was gonna be fixing it, and he did.
But are those corrective measures then told to all property owners, and I guess that's what I'm trying to understand,
What do
because,
you mean by told to all the property owners?
well, if it comes on my property, I'm gonna be alerting you. If it comes to a property like the land trust that's not out there all the time,
No, I did not notify them.
I mean, is that a process that is typical? Like, for instance, if it was not the town, but if it happened on my property,
Right.
would then all of the property, if it happened and I was doing a project and it failed, would all property members then be notified, or not? Or just my corrective measures would be X, Y, and Z?
Your corrective measures would be X, Y, and Z, but it would only be affecting your property. So who else would I notify?
Well, if I'm doing a project on my property and it leaks on your property, and this is what's happened, there's a
Right.
land trust.
No, I understand what you're saying now.
Yes.
I've never come in contact with anything like that, so
Okay, I think that's part of what has to happen is the corrective measures, obviously, are pretty clear.
Mhm.
The fence has failed, find either reinforce it or find another means. Or, okay, well, I thank you, Matt. I think that's important to know. I think we will have to look hard as to what that process is.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other oral communications?
Linda Palmer on Carter Road.
Yep.
I contacted the selectmen. You're getting 4 speed signs. I don't think you have them yet. And I was hoping that with all the traffic, with High Watch, with the tractor trailers and the box trucks and all of the traffic that goes up and down Carter Road, that we could have a speed sign on Carter Road to monitor the speed.
Okay.
Joyce, when are we gonna get our speed signs?
We have them.
We have them, okay.
It's on your agenda.
Okay. Well, I don't think, you said use the speed signs to monitor. I don't think that's
To
their
get
function.
people just to slow down.
That's what it's for, just an alert.
Exactly.
So we haven't really, as a board, determined where and when, on what schedule we're gonna apply them, but we'll take that under advisement that Carter Road's a good candidate.
The speed limit's 35 miles an hour and cars going up and down, neighbors, Federal Express trucks, UPS trucks, they far exceed that speed limit.
So it was a lot better when the road was closed.
For a year and a half, yes, yes. And there's a school bus stop at the bottom of Carter Road, and that's a concern.
Is there a specific spot that you see, having lived and traveled that road many times, where it would be most effective in your mind?
When High Watch did the speed study, the traffic study, it was flawed because the car parked across from Dugan Road. And when you make that 90-degree turn from Route 7 to Carter Road, I've clocked myself, I'm only going around 30 miles an hour. But when you go further up in the middle of the hill, where our property is, where Jim Derwin's property is, even John Haskell's property, they're going a lot faster, up and down.
Well, down's kind of hard. That's one heck of a hill.
That's true.
So, to my question, do you think that further up the hill is where you would think would be best served?
I would say further up on the hill by our property, or across the street,
Okay.
would definitely slow people down.
Well,
Okay.
we'll touch on this a little bit more, so thank you, Linda.
May I also ask, I was told by one of my neighbors that Eversource is going to cut down 700 trees on Dugan Road. Is that correct?
No,
Okay.
maybe 70, but not 700.
Not 700, okay.
And where are they cutting them?
Wherever they're
Off their lines?
We're doing enhanced prune up that line through up there, so anything that would fall under the lines within so many feet.
But all on
It's all for line protection.
Yeah.
Because Dugan Road is designated a scenic road in Kent. So I just wanted to, when I heard 700 trees, I thought that's a lot of trees to be taken down.
So they already went through with the tree warden, so all been cleared through him.
May I also ask about the bridge property? When the Carter Road was closed for a year and a half, when the final bridge was completed, the contractor did landscaping. He put trees in, he put grass in. No one's maintaining it. The grass is as tall as the trees, and I don't know whose responsibility it is to maintain the landscaping that was done on that Carter Road Bridge.
landscaping.
There's
Is it
nothing
landscaping
except
or
for right
just?
along the edge of the road that will ever be mowed up there. That's,
I know
the trees are to replace.
you're
Just,
very good about, you know, cutting down the road, but shouldn't someone be, with the metal guardrails, you can't just mow it down. Can someone go in there with a weed eater?
We're not gonna go more than a few feet behind the rail. All that was a wetlands mix that was put in there with all the flowers and stuff, so. And the trees are just to replace the forest, so-called forested part that was removed, so. It wasn't for the actual landscape, it was like to bring the tree growth back, not to be maintained as a park area or anything like that. So anything more than, like I said, a mower width from the rails, we wouldn't be cutting anyway, so.
I don't think we do that in any of the bridges. I mean, most of it's trap rock anyway on the side of them.
That had a lot of area that was reseeded because of the disturbance, but
Right?
the trees that died are supposed to be replaced. There's still waiting for those to come in.
Is that just for stability purposes? Or what's it, were the trees, why was it landscaped?
The trees were to
Replace the
replace
trees.
because of the large number of trees that were cut down to do the project. It wasn't, as quote, landscape, but
I got you.
replanted.
Chris, may I ask one
You
final
manage
question?
by its oral communication.
Thank you very much. Highwatch has been parking their vehicles at the town hall. And I would like to know why the town allows them to park their vehicles at the town hall. There could be insurance liability if anything was damaged or stolen. I don't think we let other organizations park their cars at the town hall. You can look and see, it used to be just the back left corner. You'd see a few vehicles, but the whole back seems Highwatch cars. And why?
We parked
My
back
car
there.
is there.
It's New
Joyce's
Car-
is
it's New
there,
Car Road.
The town car is there.
Yeah.
There were
Yes.
2 people on the Appalachian Trail.
I walked here, so can please help.
I can answer that. We do allow high watch, we do have them sign a waiver, we are absolved of any liability, but we also do allow hikers to park here, people who are visiting town, the same thing applies. We have them sign a waiver that says we're not responsible, but they have access to the parking lot. Generally, they come and see me, and I instruct them to park in the back so that they don't obstruct parking. If I know we're going to have an event, or like when we pave the parking lot, any of those kind of things, then we tell them, no, they can't, or we had High Watch come and move their vehicles, but we do allow other people as well.
Thanks, Joyce.
Is there under the agreement with them, is there a limitation on the number of vehicles?
There has not been to this point, and she's right, there are a couple, but not, the whole back row is not all High Watch. Half of those are hikers right now. I think 4 of them are hikers, and then I know you're parked there, on there, we're there.
The town cars there too.
And the town
I
cars.
think there were only 2 for High Watch.
Yeah.
So they're using it for public parking?
No, their guests park here, and then they bring them so that they don't have their vehicles on.
Oh, I see.
Oh, so it's
I
just
see.
guests?
I see.
Guests.
Well, that's what they call
That's
their,
what they call it.
yes.
They're
or the
clients.
people
Oh,
who
not
are
visitors,
patients.
I see. So
They're
it's
patients.
long-term-
Very good clarification,
It's
Lynn.
long-term
I'm
parking.
politically correct.
Okay, yes.
They're
I've
guests.
sat through enough of those public hearings, now I know.
Yes.
Mhm.
So.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, public, for bringing those to our attention. Written, number 1 was a email that Matt wrote,
I think
which
we
we think we
discussed.
pretty much covered. Matt, did you
Yeah,
read?
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you didn't see all of it. That's all I would like to point out, that's all. There
Well, what is
were
it?
others that were sent just to me. And one of them, like I said before, I kind of took offense to, so, yeah. Kind of
Well-
said that this whole thing sounds like it's more and more of a government cover-up,
Mm.
which I tend to take offense at. So I just like to get that out there.
I think that is not appropriate, specifically to Matt, because you asked the question that nobody responded to you. I think it's the consensus of this board that when we receive communication, written or orally, we will try to bring them forward at a meeting, and it would be best and most appropriate to bring them at a meeting so we can address them. And it's really helpful when we have people who are actually in the mechanics of the process here. So while I think we always welcome emails, when you address them, please address them to all 3 selectmen. That would be very helpful, and CCing Joyce.
Even if, but then you should send out a response or automatic receipt so that people understand that you've received their email and it'll be addressed at the next, or at least that you've received it.
Excellent point. Yes, and that's why.
Something as important as an environmental nightmare up there, you know, there's a big sign right there, Chris, that says Beaver Pond, watershed, top of the Aspetuck River, all the wonderful things about that site. And it's going on for a year, and there's deaf ears, and then when I contact Donna to see, you know, well, did you get my email? What's going on? I'm not really even sure that there's a problem there.
Well,
But it
again,
hasn't
I
been
don't
out
wanna-
there yet,
I don't
so
wanna-
you know what?
I don't want to rehash these specifics. What I'd like to do is just address the oral communications.
And I'm just letting you know, she may not be happy that I say it's a government cover-up, and you may not feel it's appropriate, but you know what? I've heard and seen how quick she operates when Rick drops the dime on a taxpayer about their activities.
Matt, your point was made, I appreciate
Thank
it. I think what I'd like to reiterate is that communications come to all 3 selectmen, if indeed there is a question, and Joyce, that way, clearly,
There's an automatic response.
I won't hit the reply button as quickly as one might think, but Joyce's automatic will say that you received it, and then it'll
That's all
go
I
into our
ask. Thank
packets,
you.
and we'll be able to address it here at the selectmen's meeting. Make sense? Make sense? Okay.
Sure.
All right. Item number 2 under written communication, social services report 3rd quarter, 17 from Leah. You see that? I went through that. That was the all the pieces of paper here. That's the treasurer's report.
if she wanted to add anything to it.
Right. All right,
Donna's report.
yep, number 3, Donna's report. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
No?
Oh, I don't know if anybody's interested, but the Birch Hill Certificate of Need, I found out today, they've officially closed the public hearing, and they will be making a determination.
The
Office of Health Strategy, they changed their name. They're no longer the Office of Healthcare Access, they are now the Office of Health Strategy.
strategy.
So, an official notice went out that the public hearing is closed, no additional information can be sent in and accepted. And closing statements were written and submitted by both Birch Hill and High Watch. So, the next thing that should come out is a determination from them on their certificate of need. With regard to the High Watch versus the Town of Kent and
Yep.
the Birch Hill Recovery Center,
Mm-hmm.
we're now close to $13,000 in legal fees and no determination has been made.
And can you give in a nutshell what the specific issue is?
High Watch is suing the Town of Kent for approving the Birch Hill application,
Mm-hmm.
stating that they are what they call classically aggrieved, and that Birch Hill's need for emergency services is going to prevent High Watch from providing the service that they need to the clients that they currently have.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
No?
Next on the agenda would be, let's see, a report from First Selectman, who is not
What
here.
should we do with that?
And, do you have anything to report?
I have nothing.
Okay. I don't have anything either, other than I would like to say that I think town looks great. I walked through it today after the holiday weekend. It's clean, it's pulled together, it's pretty amazing with all those people that were in town there. So good work to those who take care of it. Treasurer's report. All right, so she's received the town aid road, which is the amount we were concerned about. No, we knew we were getting that. Are we going to get fully funded?
It was supposed to have been fully funded during the spring, but I don't think she got it till sometime in June or.
Okay, but this 145,439, that is the, from last year?
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Transfer station income at 87.4% of budget amount, received 82,000 on the budget 94. And anything else? She's not here, huh? Do you have any questions on this?
No, it's good you got this
Yes, it is very good to get that.
update on our progress.
Was there a surplus? I mean,
On the,
on the last year? Did she talk about that at all?
I didn't see. It just,
I think that'll be a report of the Board of Finance.
yeah, that's nothing we have here yet.
Okay.
And here's said treasurer.
Just because I'm listening to you guys.
Oh, here you are.
The town aid road is this year's money,
Oh, it is this year's money?
this year's money.
So did we receive
We
last?
did,
Okay, so that's already booked, so this is
Yes.
this year's money?
Yes.
And it's only the half installment?
that's right. We'll get the other half in the spring.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
That was pretty good.
Important note, that voice really carries down that hallway.
That's because you're sitting in that seat, Jeff, that goes right down to the door.
She wants
Watch.
streaming it.
Oh, that's
Oh,
Tax refunds.
Okay, I have Toyota land lease, I have one for $70.70, another one for $108.87, and another one from Toyota for $139.30, and the last one is for James McLeod, $121.84. These are all cars. They're all yours.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll accept her oral report. I move we accept these.
Debbie, for that. Item number 8, employees report on seminars, workshop.
We went to 2, I went to 2, actually, Ty went to 1. I was out of the office for 2 days. We went to the Casio meeting on the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which
Say
is
that again?
RLUPA, it's called.
Lupa.
Yeah, Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act.
Help me.
So, it's just being, you have to make sure that you're not biased against people because of their religion.
Oh,
When it
Well,
comes
that's
to
easy.
zoning regulations. The Institutionalized Persons Act portion of it is for people who are in jail. And so, for some reason, when they created this law in 2000, they lumped them both together. And there was a gentleman that came up from Washington DC to give a presentation on that. And then Ty and I went to the 5th Thursday Forum for Land Use Commissions to hear a presentation on sustainable Connecticut and to discuss solar, wind, and farm regulations within the northwest corner.
okay.
Huh? It's in my schedule.
Donna, about that, what's the trend in terms of the regulations? Because it seems to me that there's some solar projects where the negative impact of clear cutting many, many hundreds of acres to build a solar farm is kind of counterproductive.
Well, what they're trying to do is now, if you're gonna be putting in like a solar farm, it's anything that produces more than 1 megawatt actually has to go through the siting council, and basically don't have any say in anything. Now they're trying to get the DEP involved in it to make a determination as to whether or not the cutting of that many acres is going to have an environmental impact. So they're trying to get it changed so that before the siting council can make a decision, they're also going to be taking into consideration any kind of environmental impacts. But for the most part, they don't really care.
But on our local level, on P&Z, if somebody wants to drop 3 acres of wood to open up, is that something that we even control?
We can control it if it's in the horizon line.
I don't mean control in a negative way, I just mean have a voice in it.
Yeah. If I would be controlling it if they're going to be building structures.
Well,
And
if
so,
a propane tank is a structure,
propane
that's
tank
definitely-
is not a structure in the rural district any longer. It's only a structure in the village center, commercial and residential's 1 and 2.
okay, I would imagine solar panels would be considered structures.
They are considered structures, and they do have to come in and they do have to get a permit from me, and they have to meet the setbacks. But it's not just one. It's actually like a farm that they're talking about doing over in New Milford.
New Milford, they did, right? Okay, anyone else? Moving on to new business, Park and Rec Director job description. What is that? That's,
Now, this is submitted for what purpose? Was it
Board of Selectmen have to approve
the change,
the job descriptions?
That's a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, for the change, yeah.
any change?
okay, are the changes particularly noted?
Did you read your memo?
No, I just got it.
Is this in conjunction with our,
No,
No,
this is separate from that?
yes.
Yeah, in fact, I was gonna say that that's an ongoing process, so I don't see that we should take any action on this.
Well, is there any reason to take an action now? You are not actually doing those days,
Somebody else needs to do those duties, so
and the meal program is at the community, the senior center.
senior center, yeah.
And how did we come to get that job?
The first selectman and the park and rec director negotiated those duties, what was the year, sorry. That's how it came to be.
And when was that? Long time ago.
turn your page, there's a
Yeah,
summary,
that stuff. Yeah.
back in 2012.
those at times, that,
Well, they have to be done, so until this gets approved by the Board of Selectmen, I'm still doing basic things, yes.
okay, this is a job, part of the job description that have been doing, part of your 40 hours a week.
Yes.
Okay, and now, I'm just trying to understand this, so you're saying that you are doing more than hours now? Is that, and that's why these have to be cut back, or?
This was action taken by the Park and Recreation Commission.
So the Park and Recreation Commission has decided they are changing the job description?
Yes.
So why doesn't the Park and Recreation Commission come to this meeting?
I can't answer that.
Because if they're gonna start changing your job, we would like to know why.
Okay.
I think, wouldn't that make sense? I mean, if planning and zoning is gonna change the director's job, or anybody's gonna change any
Well, I
job.
mean, we were discussing this during our mini job discussions,
Uh-huh.
and she reports directly to the commission as opposed to some other
Correct.
town employees. So I think it's appropriate for the commission to determine what her job function is and is not.
Okay, but then,
I mean, it leaves open the question of who's gonna perform these duties, and who performed them before they were assigned to you.
That was one of the reasons I believe they got assigned to me, because it was kind of a gray area, and there was a change in the status of the volunteers at the senior center. Several people passed away, so people that were doing those oversight were no longer doing them.
I guess my concern, if you will, or where my reaction is based on, you know, what is the direction then those hours are gonna be picked up and done by the Park and Recreation Commission? And if indeed they've made a commitment to do a certain amount to seniors and children, is that a philosophical shift or not?
Well, it seems to me that that's something to take up with the commission.
Which I think would be.
So they might have chosen to attend the meeting, but it's something that can be discussed separately. I would say it's an item for further review, but I mean, to me, the commission is directly responsible for Leslie's operations, and they've chosen to change her job description. It's not part of our review. Now, it may come through the management review process that there may be better ways to work this, but under our current structure, I don't see that we can do anything other than say that's their view of her job responsibilities.
But it is our job to make sure that this, I think, that this is, these hours are not being covered, and the town of Kent has been covering them. Either we inherited it, or we morphed into it, I don't know. But if we have been, is it still our obligation to maintain this program? Does Park and Rec have do you know, if they have
It's a budgeted item.
it is a budgeted item?
It's a budgeted item, yeah, as far as the facility goes.
No, the program itself, we
So,
pay for
yes,
the Monday,
yes.
Wednesday food.
Yes.
Well, to Debbie's point, it has been budgeted and approved this year, so your salary has been okayed by the town that says,
Right.
we know that you're doing X amount of hours there.
The program itself is budgeted, not Park and Rec. The food program is a budgeted item. The town pays for the food that comes from Torrington for the seniors. So you have a double budgeted issue.
I see what you're saying,
But the
yes.
town approved her position based on the fact that she would be doing some hours for seniors, I guess is where I'm going.
Right.
And
No, I don't
based,
see that. We did approve it based on, we approved the 40 hours of her work in her position. It wasn't contingent on the detailed job description.
well, it isn't, but philosophically it is. So for instance, if we say right now, we wanna take Rick off of roads, because we think that's the best, somebody's gotta do the road, and the town's gotta pay for it. The town's already approved that Rick was doing the roads.
What did the commission say about this program going
You would
forward?
need to speak to the commission, I will not speak for them,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. I think we have another item maybe for Bruce to follow up on, to get some
Well,
insights.
And I think you're right, this is dovetails nicely into the job description, so we will table this for next time and see how it works into our program. At this time, however, I think Park and Recreation has to understand that you still have to fulfill those obligations.
Okay.
And if they have a question, they can come to the board. Make sense?
Unless they had some other strategy involved, so, I mean, I don't think we're directing anything to Leslie.
No,
That's
she's a
an action.
conduit.
Right.
She's just a conduit. Let's moving on. You okay with everything else? Okay, we'll move on to item D of 9, new business, Connecticut Recreational Trail Program Grant.
So we, as employees, we are required to come to you if we apply for a grant program. So Park and Rec had come to the Board of Selectmen previously, sometime in 2016, for a Connecticut Recreation Trails grant. We sent in our application, and then there was no money by the state to do anything, so our application has kind of just been on a waiting list, and we recently were notified that they are now taking those applications again. We did increase our request by, I think, $700, so I'm coming back to you to let you know that we have resubmitted or gonna resubmit our application. So I don't know if you want to take action on that again, or just affirm that the board is still okay with that. Were we to receive this grant, the town Park and Rec would have to fund $665 of it. And basically it's for, it says in here, to plan a design of the trail at Emery Park to make it less steep, so it'd be more user friendly.
So do you have the funds in your budget to
The
be able to?
665, yes, we can
Yeah,
cover
right.
that if we were to receive
And,
this.
and don't we have a, let's see, what did we do? At the last town meeting, we were allowed to accept up to $500,000 in grants, so I don't think we need to take any action to do that, but I think, yes, certainly any grants you can go and get.
Okay.
That would make sense.
Well, I wouldn't say it quite like that, but as I recall, this grant imposed very little restriction on us, just some financial support.
Right.
What's the timing of this? Do we need to do it tonight? Because we were probably not going to take any action tonight.
October 31st, it has to go in by, so no.
So
We
I
still have
think
October.
we should wait for a full complement of selectmen, and it'll be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Well, what's the problem? I'm sorry, am I missing something? They are going to apply for a grant that they've been chasing. They have the funds in their budget to be able to supplement that, should they get it. They don't need the Board of Selectmen to approve that. Am I right?
Well, it says she's requesting the Board of Selectmen to endorse the grant process.
Because
And
it was, the board did approve it last time, when we initially submitted. That was part of what we have been asked to do.
Well, I mean, I see no reason why it wouldn't be accepted this time, but I think it would be appropriate to get Bruce's input.
Okay.
And there's no timing issue, we can do it at the next meeting. Is there some timing issue?
October 31st.
Okay, is there some reason why you really think it should be endorsed today?
I defer to you.
Okay. I would suggest we wait till next meeting.
So moved. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Old business, management review. Here's the update from Lee Palmer. Let's see, he interviewed everybody, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, everyone got their half hour?
Correct. No more.
Huh?
No
Or more.
One more, yeah. Yeah.
He said that he believes he will be prepared to give the final report at the next selectmen's meeting, but I am asking, do you want it on the regular agenda, or would you prefer it to be a special meeting so I can coordinate his schedule with yours?
Is the anticipation that we're gonna get the report ahead of time, but it'll be formally presented at a meeting?
That would be my,
That would be
yes.
my preference.
I will suggest that to him.
Makes
But I
sense.
just wanna know when you want him to physically come to do his verbal
My
presentation.
view would be a special meeting for it, because
I agree.
it'll eclipse a lot of the mundane
So
stuff.
then I'll send out
that
an
we do
email
right
trying to
through.
come up with dates.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
You good with that? I'm good with that, okay. Grant request form and process. You have any other further update on? Last we left it, you were just gonna do that minor changes to those, right?
Yes,
And we can table that.
I think we better table that.
I knew that.
because,
Bruce
I
isn't
didn't
here.
do that. This Bruce isn't here.
You think supposed to go out in September though?
Mm-hmm.
You said they were gonna go out in September.
First thing I ever forgot to do.
Why can't you approve it with these corrections or something like that?
I thought we were, that was. the
You were
direction
so
we were-
close
we were
last
headed.
time.
We did, actually.
I thought we were really just looking at this one, just to have them cleaned up when we did approve them. Do you know if they actually in the minutes?
I'm just gonna look.
Thank you, Leslie, and Joyce. I'm looking at Leslie. Yeah, I think they were with just the minor changes.
Yes.
We'll include a section to explain the intended use of the grant, and the request form will be sent out with the treasurer's letter, so you had to revise that section again where
Mhm.
they wanted to know, why you wanted to know why they wanted the grant.
But did we?
And you were gonna include deadlines on it.
Well, there was some discussion about deadlines. I had initially a January deadline, and then we changed it to November 1.
Right.
So I made that change, so I was gonna add just intended use of funds.
Correct.
Oh, that's right, we also discussed a little more detailed ongoing reporting of the funds, which I think we all felt was kind of over the top, and we're making progress on this.
Mhm.
Maybe we can, there's the change
Mhm.
handwritten, and it will be cleaned up in terms of the typography.
So November 1st is really, that's the key, that we're gonna get it earlier, that's good. And intended use of funds. I'm okay with that. I'll make a motion to
Okay.
accept this as amended, and written final form will be sent to Joyce and the treasurer for dissemination.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. 2018 board goals. So we have those attached. Some of these, one of which we talked about was trying to get all, for lack of a better term, all chairman or all boards chairman group together. And I think that's still something that I would like to see happen. I'd like to see it happen if we can in maybe October,
I think this is a good time frame to do that.
okay? How do we set that up? What's the easiest way to try to do that? Put something out on everyone's calendar?
What's that thing you sent out?
Doodle poll.
The what?
Do a doodle poll.
So that basically everyone can figure out what date is the best?
You just give them a range of dates and times.
Yep.
and then put their names on it, and they check off when they're available, and then it just calculates what's the best date. Now, you're just gonna see chairmans, or do the people who work for those commissions need to be there as well?
What's your thought?
That's probably not a one-size-fits-all question. I mean, in some departments, just the chairman might make sense. There may be some departments where a subordinate is vital to supply real-life information. So I guess I'd leave it to the chairman if they need some backup. That will make the meeting more substantive.
Okay, all right, so.
Yeah, as an
I mean,
example.
You know, I've got like 4 boards, so.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, if you think you could carry the discussion yourself, fine. If you thought you need some support, I think they could be welcome.
Well, you want the chairmans of those boards. What I'm asking is if the ARB, the zoning board of appeals, the inland wetlands, and the planning and zoning chairman all come to this meeting, do I need to be there as well? Is what I'm asking, as staff support.
Yes, I think the answer. It's not just, I may have misnamed it by calling it all chairs because I didn't mean just the chairman. I meant the integral part of the operations, which would be yourself, yourself, yourself.
Okay.
And then the chairs as well would be appropriate if they felt. But even something as simple as this park and rec issue would just come to the surface, and we would be able to talk about it fluidly and just be able to understand a little bit better. And I think that's the goal here, is to try to get communication, try to see where there's commonality in our boards, and while you guys already know that, this side of the table may not, and it would, I think be helpful.
Okay, then I request that you're gonna do that, not do it from the 12th of October to the 26th. Because I will
Okay.
be here.
Mhm.
But if you wanna go for it without me, then that's fine.
Well, we can, October, if the date in November works, I don't think we have to be hard and true. I just think it would be nice to have it done before budget times come in, you know, but.
If you give me an item, an agenda item, I'd be more than happy to send that out in the poll to try to come up with a date, but I kind of need to let them know what your
Sure.
intent of the
I'll shoot
meeting
one around to
is.
you and Bruce, and then we can just
Okay.
pare it down and then give it to Joyce. Thank you, good suggestion. Let's see, let's move on to speed signs, road signs. We have them, I understand. They have been paid for. What is the process, Rick, in terms of deciding? I know we have 2 different things. We have DOT,
Yep.
Connecticut
Town
DOT, and then we have our
On the
own.
town roads, we can put them wherever we feel, but the ones where they're gonna be on either Route 7 or 341, we need some
All right, so let's take,
input as to where you want them, so
let's
I can
take
get
those out of
permits.
the, I'm sorry to talk over you. Go ahead.
But I need to get permits for each area, so do you guys want to decide that, or you want Andrew and myself to decide where they should go, or?
What's the length of time for a permitting process?
It could be just a phone call and fill out a piece of paper, or weeks if somebody has to come out and look at it.
Wouldn't they make more sense just on town roads? The state is the state, I mean, let them worry about it.
Well, I mean, like the one on Route 7 going into Cornwall, I think that was pretty effective.
But that's actually in, I can see in town, within the town, you know, that's their little village.
Well, we're talking about like coming in on Route 7 here or on 341.
How many signs do we have?
4.
4. So limits it pretty quickly.
I mean, you switch them around a lot because you don't want to leave them one place too long
Well,
anyway, but.
You know what would be helpful for me is to understand what these things look like. I have an impression as to what they look like, which is a standard, simple, small speed sign like we see going into Cornwall.
That's basically it.
And but
You have to have the,
sounds like it's movable.
well, you
I want to Cornwall, is
just
that
take it
movable?
off, you take it off the post and move it to a different post.
I see, so you just put on a post that's already there. Got it.
It has to be in proximity of a speed limit sign.
It's got to have the speed limit posted on it, and then it tells you your speed, but you can regulate so that the kids aren't trying to see how fast they can make it go either. You can put a maximum, or when it lights up, the maximum speed it'll show.
Well,
Does it have to be at a speed limit sign on a town road as well, or is that just a state road? Yeah. And that kind of limits it right there.
well, you can pick up a speed sign and move it any way you want. So if, for instance, if Linda,
It's
Oh,
gotta
okay,
be
have
the
a
legal,
speed-
really, it should be the legal speed limit the state has set on any of our roads, so. We,
right, but what I'm saying is the determination of where a speed sign goes is all up to the Board of Selectmen. It has nothing to do with a location on a road, is that accurate?
the ones that we're putting up now, the light-up ones are a regular speed limit sign.
The regular speed signs
That's governed by the state,
on the town roads
yes.
are governed by the states as to
You know-
where they sit?
They give us a specific speed for a certain length of road. And then if they're gonna change the limit, like on Skip Mountain, it's 2 different limits.
Okay,
So they give us the length for, on the bottom where it's 25, then it changes. And then on top, it changes back by the school again, so they give us the lengths of each speed area.
so let's take Linda's Road as an example. That's one speed limit on that road, isn't it?
As far as I remember.
Okay,
all
so
the-
is it achievable, as Linda has requested, to put it up where she is? Do you have a speed limit in front of your house or near your house?
Very right by John Haskell's house.
Okay, so that would be an appropriate place to put it. And that's, okay.
Well,
Um,
I think Linda may want it coming down the hill, but, because I believe they're going faster coming down.
yeah, but you better stop coming down.
A lot of them don't think they need the brakes till they get down past Dugan Road, so.
I think this, when did we get the signs in? Recently?
A week or a little bit more. They got delivered.
I think we kind of need to look at a town map and come up with the recommendations on where some should go. We have one from Linda already, and I think that's a legitimate consideration. Do we want to?
I'm more concerned with the ones that are going, if we put them on the state roads, so I can get the permits for those, because ours, we can put out pretty much anytime.
So, are there places you'd suggest on the state roads that we could begin to apply for the permits?
Well,
I guess we need to know what the process is, because if it's.
I thought, before when we used to have the trailer, we put it just north of the Congregational Church. And I asked Andrew this morning if he thought that's where it should go, and he thinks it should be further towards the village. So it's,
We'd agree.
you know,
Excuse me. We almost get run over in the stop, in the crosswalk, at least 3 times a week.
Well, personally, I think that there are only 4 signs, and we have a lot of road to cover. I think the Elizabeth Street, which I've said a number of times, with the school children down there, is an imperative. I hear Linda, and I would imagine there are probably many other people on other streets that we should hear from. I think it'd be appropriate if Bruce put out on the newsletter that we have these signs, there are 4 of them going in, and we are considering where they go. And it would be nice to have input from people, because we may end up with more than 4 at some point. The state, clearly there's a problem on the state roads coming into town. And that's something I think we should address, but I'm more with Debbie, as we paid for them through our own taxpayer dollars, and you know, the state should be doing a job of patrolling Route 7 if indeed they find people speeding, which we know is happening. And if at some point we decide we want to buy more, then we should. But right now, I would like to see them all out, all 4 of them, as quickly as possible.
I was gonna say, can you suggest where to put them, and then you can always rotate them every 30, 60, however many, you can create a policy later, but if he has them.
I think you're right, we could rotate them very easily every,
Well, you've already got one up north, and you've got one on School Street, so you just need 2 more locations and you're done.
right, we're done.
Go.
Any ideas?
East
Did it
west.
just say that it can have the speed limit sign on the device, or does it have to
that's
be
what's
within
required. Yeah.
But it doesn't have to go in an existing pre-approved, state-approved speed limit sign?
To be a legal speed limit, it does, yeah.
No, I mean for the location of the speed sign, the speed device.
I know, but we can't just put it anywhere in town where there's, make up the speed limit. You gotta have this approved speed
It's
limit.
about
No, I
location,
didn't
Rick.
mean
So
that.
as an example, on Elizabeth Street, when you come out of the school,
Yeah.
there is a speed limit sign like right at the corner, which makes no sense because people are just turning the corner. If you or someone, it was determined that we could move that sign further down the road, we would be able to do that, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what you were
Lindsay.
asking, were you not?
No, his question was, do the speed signs need to be in proximity to the existing speed limit signs? That's what you were asking, right?
Yes.
Yes, or can we put another speed limit sign on our device as we move it from location to location? Does it have to be an existing approved?
There's gotta be
speed
one
sign?
on the device.
On the device, yes.
It doesn't matter where the other speed limit signs are on the road.
Okay.
It's gotta
That
be
was the answer.
Okay,
the required speed limit for that area is
So we
put
have
on
a-
the device and then.
we have an array of speed limit signs and we tack one on if it's a 30-mile-an-hour zone
Yes.
and put it in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. Okay, so it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, I know, so I'll have to, depending on where they're going all the time, I may have to get a few more signs.
So where do you recommend? We've had one person and two people say, Rick, where do you think, if you even have a
I
suggestion?
can ask Andrew and see where he's got, I know he got some complaints this past week from people on Maple Street,
Maple
but
Street.
that's 341, so.
What about South Kent, near the school, around in there?
On Bridge Road.
Yeah, Bridge Road, that's a pass-through, that's a speedway, put it on there.
Canis Flats, I know it's,
Yeah.
gets pretty fast. But when they've gone out to run radar, sometimes they're lucky if they get one person that's doing more than so many miles over the limit.
Well, I think we have them, they should go out, and I would approve these two places up on Carter Road and on Elizabeth Street, and the discretion of where Rick thinks, with Andrew, the other two should go. And then, I think, Rick, if you could come up, based on feedback from, hopefully feedback from putting it out on the newsletter.
That's an interesting idea if it goes out on the newsletter.
And then we would
people actually
rotate them,
respond.
and then we would rotate them, and if need be, it's every 6 months, you pick them up and move them somewhere. But,
Or
I think it'll
put
be
a quicker
quicker than that,
rotation.
or whatever
Move
rotation,
around more often.
whatever rotation you deem appropriate when you consult with Andrew.
Yeah.
But I think if you two can give us that recommendation and we get input from people where they'd like to see them, then we should just put them up.
Do these have recording devices in them?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
Hey,
so
my-
there's-
My understanding is it's just tells you what your speed is.
oh, there's no feedback
No, I
to
can,
you?
And it's not a ticketing device.
No, I know
These are
it is a
just-
ticketing device,
No,
and
there's
that is feedback.
Just
Is
a
that-
visual feedback that you're going over their speed
Oh.
limit.
No.
Or-
I can get information out of it, I just gotta get the right program.
And what kind of information can you get out of it?
I would assume it's gonna tell me numbers of cars and speed, I don't know if it'll have time or anything like that on it yet, I haven't really done it yet.
So you could go do car count
Yes, these are,
and average speed?
I don't know if to say average speed, the former ones used to, that we used had they would give you a car count for a certain period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then some of the speeds in that, I don't remember if he gave you every speed or the high and the low.
Well, that would be good data to have, just to know how much wear and tear on each road is happening. What kind of car traveling.
I'll pull the manual out and, before the next meeting, see what's. in the
Well,
loop.
I'd make a motion that we have Rick install the new signs, one on Elizabeth Street. I would recommend going to school rather than coming from school.
Good.
And one
Because there's no grass on the other side.
one on Carter Road, and then the other two on town roads where Rick and Andrew deem it appropriate.
Okay, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, Rick. What next? What next? What next? What next? Anything else on that? Okay, this is something that's really going to, item E, electric car charging station. I would like to get this thing off the main menu. what do we have to do we're waiting for this thing to,
We're not waiting for anything anymore.
Apparently, we can remove it at any
We
time.
can go rip it out right now.
is this
You
something?
personally?
No.
Is this something that we want to remove?
No.
I would like to see it removed.
Okay. And what is the reason you think it needs to be removed, would like to see it removed?
Because we're paying the electric bill.
Okay.
And there was a provision in the agreement that we can begin to charge for the electricity, but we ran through that many times, and it's somewhat impractical, but I think it'll be cost negative in terms of maintaining the billing system and the amount of money we're going to get from it. If it was self-sustaining, and it could be demonstrated on a cost analysis to be self-sustaining, I could change my mind. But the look we took at it maybe, I'm going to say maybe a year and a half ago, was it was just going to cost us money.
So how much has it cost the town in a year?
No idea.
There's no way to tell.
But it's
my
we
understanding
didn't get
it's
money
not a lot.
back. How much is not a lot? That's the same question she's
Okay.
asking.
Well, and the question is, you keep the lights on over at the bathroom. I mean, it's a service, we keep it, we don't get any money really other than showers over there.
Well, I mean, I just find it objectionable that if you happen to own an electric car, you get free driving. If you don't own an electric car, you don't.
Okay, so that's a philosophical reason, I get it.
Well, yeah,
I get it.
it's a
I get it.
philosophical
I get
reason.
it, I get it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. I think that, the whole idea they underwrite solar panels is so people move towards that direction. And if that's not the direction you think's going, I get it, but, so if we were to move it, do we give it away, do we,
You can. I checked with the grant people.
you can?
You can give it away, you can throw it away, you can do, you own it, you can do what you want with it.
Only half of it's working presently.
The only thing they ask is when you take it down, you make sure you take down the signs, and we have to notify them so we can be taken off the map.
So the
That's the
question
only
is,
restriction.
on the cost analysis, removing it, taking it down versus the money that we have to pay to cover it, the answer is net neutral?
Taking it down, Rick, is that something we would do? Just remove, we have to get an electrician, I guess, to secure it.
Shut the breakers off and take it out and cap the wire.
I don't think removing it costs any money.
But it has to be done by an electrician, right? Doesn't it? It was put in by an electrician.
Oh, it's good.
How about a straw poll in the newsletter?
Oh, that's a good idea.
I like that.
Let's make sure it's worded properly.
Who wants to remove
Remember
that
spy
awful-
versus spy?
That awful cost of, awful thing that's costing us money,
Or
oh, yes.
who wants to
But you have to
remove
have
it?
how much money it's costing the town.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to know that
We have to
in
know.
order to ask the question.
Barbara?
The only way to know that
I'm
is
not
to run a
working.
separate meter on the thing itself, because it's coming through the,
But you
It's
guys
not
also,
needed separately, so we don't know, but we do know that it is being paid for by the town.
yeah, but when I asked, there was no negligible increase in the electricity use.
That's what I
I
understood.
kept asking that question and I kept getting that answer.
Do you believe that?
Yes. I mean, why would
Okay,
these
we
people in the room lie to me?
Yeah, why, no,
It's just as inconceivable that we're delivering electricity to an electric vehicle and it's not using any electricity.
But it's a big building, they're using a lot of electricity.
Okay, but that electricity is going to charging electric vehicles that are personally owned. I mean, you don't have to agree with my position, but I don't think that that's an appropriate use of town money to selectively give free driving energy to people who happen to have electric cars. We've had it for 3 years, if they used it, fine. Now we get rid of it, or else we put the money into it to adapt it to charging. I mean, I'm not arguing with you, but you're stating a certain position that I think some other people agree with, but I don't.
Jeff, could I just make a comment?
Sure.
I mean, I do know a few people that do drive electric cars, and I think, I agree, I don't think taxpayers should fund people to charge their cars, because it does come up on every Tesla map in the country, where you can go to charge.
Right.
But I do believe somewhere in Kent, you should have a charging center, because I've heard time and time again, when you get to these rural areas with your $120,000 electric vehicle, and all of a sudden you realize you miscalculated, you need to charge, you have to have somewhere to charge it. You know, you can't let it go dead. So to have a charging station in the center of town near your bathrooms or whatever the welcome center is, I think that's a great place to put it and have it so it's user fee. You know, you put your card in, I don't know, is it a supercharger or is it a regular charge? Does it supercharge?
I have no idea.
I don't think it's a speed charger, I don't know
Okay,
too much
so,
about
but
it.
they could put their card in, they could charge for a couple
And
hours
they
and
can get to
go
where they need to go.
get dinner.
What we looked at was the process, and moving it, I don't think was terribly expensive, physically moving it, but the ongoing operation of the the credit card charging system was an ongoing fee. And it just seemed like it was going to be, in the long run, a negative financial thing. Now, if the town wants to support that, I think that's, you know, something we could consider, but to me personally, I find it objectionable that, you know, we're providing free automobile energy to those people with electric cars.
I agree.
I understand the issue of you don't want to take your Tesla up here if you're going to end up being stranded.
No, I think it's a service that eventually more and more people are gonna have electric cars. And to have a spot at your welcome center or somewhere centralized, town hall is really not a great place for it anyways. At the welcome center, they can park, they can charge, they can pay for it, and then they can mill around town, have dinner, whatever, it's a great spot.
I agree with you completely. Maybe like the Chamber of Commerce would be willing to belly up to support it there.
The bathrooms don't really have enough parking space to give up the space just for designated. It's an issue. We thought about it, we talked about it. There's only a few spaces, and if you occupied one with just that, it takes up the number of parking spaces.
I mean, I don't object to having the charger in town, and certainly there will be some effect of it attracting people to town who otherwise might be fearful of, you know, roaming too far into the country. So that's all valid, I just object to the economic transfer.
Maybe then offer it to the PACCO, and maybe they could sell electric cars.
That's a good idea.
And that way, you're selling, I just think you know, it's the thing of the future. You know, if you didn't have a gas station in Kent, think about how many people
And
drive.
if we had a gas station to give away free gas, it would be.
Well, I agree with you with the free part, but I think it's important that if everybody wants to be so green and care about the environment, more and more electric cars are on the road every day, and I think it's important that somewhere in town there be a charging station.
Perfectly valid point. Rick, you said only half of it's working now?
Yes.
What's the deal with that? Is it repairable, or is it?
Could be repairable, it's out of warranty, and Bruce didn't want to spend any money on it, so. He was the one that talked to the company. I don't know the particulars as far as how much it would cost to replace the circuit board or whatever. And if you're gonna move it over to the welcome center, you'd probably just purchase a new one that was credit card ready and all that, instead of trying to retrofit this one for, what was it, $5,000 or $6,000, something like that. I forget what that was to retrofit it, but there is another one over at Crew Design, which I don't know, I was working at this present time, but that one's also listed in all the websites.
Well, I think, to me, the question is this town committed to trying to force, as the government programs are trying to do with solar and wind and all this, are we of the mindset that we would like to try to push that forward, even if it does mean that we are paying for it or not? If you don't,
That's
then
exactly the threshold question.
if you don't, then what you do is you have a used system that you can give to a gas station that may want to do it, but they'd be probably smarter to go and bite the bullet and put the $5,000 one in with a credit card and make their money that way too. If indeed, I don't know what Bruce's position on this, I'm more of the mindset, if indeed we're going to keep it, to move it, and to move it right out to the bathrooms, because I think if that's really our community center, that's appropriate place for it. If you,
I agree that would be a good place. Joyce indicates there may be a parking issue if we end up having to dedicate a space where somebody's gonna park for some number of hours to charge their car.
And somebody figures out it's a better place to get an electric car then, I don't know, the question comes down is does this town feel like it wants to be able to support those who drive electric cars? And you know, it's, right now we are doing it, we are supporting it, and it's a statement that was made, I don't know when it was put in, 10 years ago? Not even?
No, not
Or is that 6 years ago?
2015.
2015, wow.
It'll be 3 years ago.
Wow, that was, or not, I mean, you know, but I think we need to get this thing resolved one way or another rather than just having it hang over here.
Well, we've taken, crossed the threshold here because we now clearly have the ability to remove it or dispose of it, whatever we want to do.
It was our, yep.
There was some uncertainty as to what our, what latitude we had, so that's cleared up. So I think,
I like to think it was Debbie's idea of putting it out again on the newsletter, or was it? Of putting it out there and seeing what people want, and if that's something that they want to keep, then clearly it's budgeted for.
what's budgeted for?
The station.
When Bruce puts it out in the newsletter, I would like to say that all 3 selectmen review the wording.
I don't even have to revert, you can send it up as how you wish, I don't really, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me. I think what's really, you know, key is people are gonna say they either want it or they don't. And if, I agree with Matt, I think it is a great tourist attraction, if you will. Somebody will come in here and they will plug in and they will go out to dinner. And I think we will recoup that, that energy, with that cost very quickly. I get your philosophical, I get it, I understand it completely, and I'm not that far off of it. But there's such a small, a negligible amount, as I understood, that they didn't even see a blip in change here in Town Hall of energy.
Yeah, but that's not the right analysis.
Well, you did an analysis based on money. So you either stay with your money or you stay with your philosophy. And I'll be with you.
Well, the philosophy is that money is being given to those who have electric cars.
Yes.
Does it matter how much money we use in the town hall? How much electricity we use in the town hall? If the town hall was 5 times the size, then would you be advocating multiple stations to give it away? The issue isn't how much the town hall uses, the issue is how much is being given away to those with electric cars.
That's your philosophy. My philosophy is there's no market for it right now. So government, like always, has tried to make a market to try to jumpstart it. They do it with milk pricing, they do it with lots of things, okay? So this is simply just in my mind, here in Kent, our small little effort to jumpstart what we, and I agree with Matt, in the future it'll all be electric, or it'll be something to that.
And at some point, the economics of it will drive it. Patco might say, you know what?
It's time.
We're in.
Amen.
And they put it in, and they get a speed charging station, and the Tesla comes in, plugs in, get a cup of coffee, and they're off.
I like it.
But when it's market-driven, based on economic realities, then that's different from the town taking the initiative to give stuff away.
Got it.
Okay, obviously, we're gonna table this.
We're gonna table this.
And I don't see any way to come up with any definitive assessment of how much electricity is being used at the charging station. But clearly, if we were to keep it in place, we're gonna have to invest money in a new station or repair this station. So it's not without any direct cost to the town.
Well, unless when it doesn't no longer functions, we just pull it out. And hopefully at that time, Patco or somebody would already take that over. But I think let's move to just put it out in the newsletter that would like to have some input as to whether this is something that they'd like to see stay in town, or however you want to reword it. And then we'll get that reaction when Bruce comes back. 3 of us will vote it.
Fair enough.
Okay. Email from DEP, can remove the unit anytime can.
On to F.
On to F. Let's see, email from Emmett Andrew, written request procedure regarding the collection of tax policy. That was, what was that? Did you get that one? this, as Ann is not here. Good afternoon, just to follow up regarding the credit collection fee charged to me, total of $166.81. Please keep me up to date on whether or not it is within the regs to reimburse me. I thought she was.
We've dealt with
She
that.
was.
We've
Okay.
dealt with that.
Also, I'd like to have Debbie submit her written procedure to the Board of Selectmen for review at the next meeting. This will help keep the problem at bay and improve the communication between the townspeople and the tax collector. I expect to see it on the agenda. That is the only way to hold her accountable. Thank you for your input Tuesday's meeting. Regards, Ann McAndrew.
Okay, that email was old news, if you will, but the issue we had remaining was the development of a collection policy.
Well, my first thing on a collection policy would be oral presentation of all delinquents. Do you want that? That was the stickler to begin with. You didn't want these names in public. Do you want them in public now?
That wasn't the initial issue.
Yes, it was. The name was made public. That's what I've heard ad nauseum. Do you want that?
The issue had to do with acceptance of payments.
Well, we've already dealt with that with the Board of Finance, so that's done. Accepting payments, that's taken care of. So,
Okay, that's true.
so if that's a
worked
dealt
with you
with
on
thing,
that.
do you want oral presentations of delinquents? I have been told you do not.
I didn't find it to be particularly necessary.
Well, that's
the issue
step
is a
number
written
one.
procedure regarding collection policy.
That's number one in my policy. Do you want that?
Okay,
That's what I need an answer.
Well, I guess the bigger question is, I have yet to see a written policy as to your procedures.
Okay.
And if you would like to, one, we don't have to do that
I
now.
can hand you the statutes.
Well, I don't want just a statute. What I think would be appropriate, well, it's,
Don't, statutes come first. That's the basis of everything here. It's not a P and Z. We don't make up ordinances, we don't make up regulations that are then voted on by a committee. I have statutes. It's like Andrew doesn't make up a policy on a speeding ticket. He has a law. It's that same sort of thing. So for a policy, policies start with making the delinquents known to the public.
policies,
In my book, that's the
I
policy,
get it.
that's step number one, my policy.
maybe the wording is wrong. Let's not call it policy. Do you have a bullet pointed sheet in which the taxpayer can understand, or a flow chart, or anything that a taxpayer could understand the process? So as an example, if you go in and you want to build a shed on your property,
Okay, let's
there's
just
a
think-
policy and a procedure, and if you could give us something like that, that would be helpful.
Okay, in the tax office, it's real simple. Pay your bill on time. When you become delinquent, you are in a different situation. So pay your bill, and this is not an issue.
Define different situation and define process of which the different situation is handled.
Then you are, first of all, your name becomes public, and that's the stickler. I have had people tell me, but you made the names public, Debbie. That's the problem.
I don't think it was the problem in this situation. In this situation, the person
Yes, it
said,
was.
no, actually, the problem was in this situation, if we're going to rehash it, is that your procedure did not work for that person, and they didn't understand that that was the procedure in which you were doing, and that procedure seemed to have been different than your procedures on other people.
No, there were 19 people on the
That's
list.
great. So to avoid that, all we're asking is if you can give us a blow-by-blow, bullet point, flow chart, whatever the heck you want to give us that says, this is what happens, Chris Garrity, when you're late with your taxes.
Okay.
And this is the next thing when you bounce a check on me, Chris Garrity. This is the next thing that happens, Chris Garrity, if indeed you only pay me portion. This is what happens, this is what happens. If we had that understanding in the flow chart, and it was promulgated, there wouldn't be an issue. Names or no names.
Okay, I can.
Does that make sense?
It's real simple.
Okay.
I will, first, everything will be public. If you are delinquent,
It's your office, you choose how you handle it. I think we're just
I
looking for a
chose.
procedure that everybody knows that, yep, that's what it was done.
do you want the names public?
What is
You
your,
haven't answered
what is
my
your
question.
choice? Why is it ours to decide?
Because this is the issue.
What do all tax collectors do? What is another, statute-wise, do you?
Statute-wise, what you're delinquent is public. Everything is public.
Right, but there's a difference between being public and promulgating it. So my question is when,
No, not really. Not in the
Okay,
tax, not in the
okay.
tax world.
so then all I say is if you have a procedures based on your statutes, if you could present them to us, I think we would understand that that's what it is and we could tell everybody that's how it is. And then we could
Okay.
overlay it on that case, and if it works out, then,
Okay.
does that make sense?
If you're delinquent for more than 3 months, I will present the list to the Board of Selectmen to be publicly put in the minutes.
I think,
That's
to be
procedure.
clear, I would like to see next month a policy, a bullet point policy based on,
I'm really leery, as I said, about making bullet point policies when there are already legal laws, statutes in place.
and I'm very leery of going forward without this, because then we're going to be with you in 7 or 8 months with somebody else, and it seems pointless. I don't know, is it too
As
much
I
of a problem to get that from you? Is it, what do you see?
No, I haven't. I have policies already. But I just find that I don't want you picking and choosing, which I think in some cases, perhaps that happens.
Well, then, we will work hard and diligent not to pick and choose, and you will stay on top of us with your
What do you mean
policy.
pick and choose?
Well, it's just a personal opinion, and I'm not, it's 5 after 6, so I'm not gonna start a big ruckus at the moment. I'd rather.
Well, I hope you don't think that the ruckus is with us, because that's not where the ruckus is. The ruckus has somehow happened with a taxpayer. We are trying to address that taxpayer's,
Delinquent.
it doesn't matter.
Well, yes, it does, that's the whole.
Then show me a policy and we'll be able to send it to her.
Okay,
But if you can give us a policy, then we can give it to her.
I
If
certainly
you don't
will.
give us a policy, we're gonna have the same problem.
And I'll give you the statutes, and I'll tell her that all delinquents,
Well, again, I would request that next month we see a written, bullet-pointed policy.
oh, it's gonna be short. There's nothing elongated about this.
I don't wanna wrestle this up with you, Debbie. You
Delinquents.
either do it or you don't do it. It's
Oh,
your
I
choice.
will do
Thank
it,
you.
but it will be very short.
Anything else on this, Jeff?
No.
All right,
I move we
let's
adjourn.
move on. Thank you.
Adjourned at
Adjourned.